Hi guys. So I think it's been long enough that I've been silent about one of the best films ever made in my lifetime, probably in your lifetime too, I'm gonna bet on it, Megamind. So today we are gonna be talking about the first act of the 4-act story structure. I have my notes on Megamind. I literally, you guys, sat down and watched this movie and took notes, and it felt so silly, and I loved it. I was like, I'm so glad that I get to do this. So let's talk about Megamind. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all the beautiful things. I really appreciate it. I am dying of excitement right now, you guys. I'm wearing like my $12 Walmart muscle tee, and I'm just ready to talk about this movie because it's my favorite thing ever. First, let's go over the, what am I trying to say? First, let's go over Act 1 of the 4-act structure in depth. I have a little bit more to say on each plot beat that hopefully will help you guys a little bit more with what you're writing. And then after we go through that in depth, I'm going to tell you how it applies to the best movie ever made. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh yeah, here's the part where I take my script and I put it from 12-point font to 22-point font. Or no, let's do 26. Because that's how bad my eyes are. And my laptop is right in front of me. Okay, so there is a helicopter. So first of all, if you haven't seen the video that I did on the 4-act story structure, you can find that right here. It's just an overview of the entire structure, a basic look at all of it. So Act 1 of the 4-act story structure is the setup. This is basically where we set up the story. The goal of this act is to introduce your characters and what their normal life is like. It's to show everyone how things are before the inciting incident, before the catalyst pushes everything else into motion. All of those things are super important to do, but the most important thing to do in Act 1 is to establish your characters' want, their need, which is a different thing, their fear, and then their misbelief, the reason that they want and fear and need what they want and fear and need. I talk about this concept in my story circle video, so go watch that if you haven't seen it. But basically, your character at some point in their life went through an event that changed the way they saw the world. You will find this in any good, deep character. They will have a moment in their life when they learned something about the world that their whole personality, everything that they do is built on that. And usually it's going to be like a childhood thing. Like, it's not like, oh, yesterday this event happened that created this misbelief in my life. It's going to be like, when I was a kid, all the way back then, I got messed up. The setup is where you start putting some of that stuff into play. So you start hinting maybe at what happened in their past. You start incorporating what they fear and what they want. They don't know their need yet. So unless you are like an omniscient third person point of view, the reader isn't going to know that either. Their need isn't revealed until later. I think their need is going to be revealed in Act 4 or 3. But basically, right now our job is to establish the normal world, who our characters are, a little bit of how the world works, not too much of how the world works, what our characters fear, what they want, and why. And you don't want to front load all the backstory. Like, you need to sprinkle it in, little touches of backstory here and there. So the first plot beat in the 4-act story structure is the hook. And the hook basically is there to start your story with a bang. It's there to immediately introduce your reader to your character and to their internal conflict. I love the way that Megamind does this, you guys. Okay, let me get my notes. My pages and pages of notes. They're glowing! So Megamind starts with, here's how my day's been so far, I think is like the opening line or something like that. He's falling from the sky. By the way, Megamind spoilers ahead. So don't watch this video if you haven't seen Megamind. And if you haven't seen Megamind, go watch Megamind first, you guys. It's a masterpiece. So he's basically falling to his death, and he says my end starts at the beginning. So we're immediately thrown into, this is what they call, damn it, what do they call this? Hang on. What do we call this? We authors. What is it called? In media res. Okay, that's what they call this. In media res is Latin for in the midst of things, and it means the practice of beginning an epic or other narrative by plunging into a critical situation that is part of a related chain of events. So Megamind begins in media res. That is one option for your hook. And it immediately introduces you to him and to his like satirical humor. He says, my story starts at the beginning, my end starts at the beginning. And then we rewind all the way to when he is a baby. A babe. So that is the hook for Megamind. There are lots of different ways to do a hook, but that is how Megamind does it. Remember, the hook just is there to immediately grab your reader. Ideally, in Megamind, the hook and the setup kind of blend together, which if you can get that to be the case is awesome. But the hook is where you're gonna wanna start introducing the internal conflict, which is basically your character's want against your character's fear. So the hook goes right into the setup, which is where we introduce things like important settings inside characters. And the setup plot beat is for showing what life is like. This is the normal life plot beat. It's our opportunity to create contrast between life before and life after. And it's a good way to show why your character is feeling the way that they are, why they're wanting what they are. So if you do the setup right, it will really put a huge emphasis on how big of a deal the inciting incident is and how much this call to action could change the character's situation. So we're doing a lot of getting things ready for later. In Megamind, the setup is is that his planet's falling apart. His planet's falling apart. His parents are running him to this little baby carriage thing, and his dad says, "You are destined for..." And then the carriage closes. And he's like, "I'm destined for what?"
I didn't quite hear that last part, but it sounded important. Destined for what?
So there's a little bit of a theme happening. In the 4-act story structure, stating the theme is a separate beat kind of, but it can happen anywhere in the first act, anywhere preferably in the very beginning of the first act. We want that theme stated early, but in a way that's not too obvious. Sometimes the opposite of the theme is stated too. The setup basically is that he's sent out into space to find his destiny. His rivalry with Metro Man is established, and we see that Metro Man has always had it easier and better. Megamind ends up in jail. Metro Man ends up at a rich person's house. We see that Megamind envies Metro Man, and he ends up finding value in himself through his inventions. He doesn't get praise. He's the black sheep. He doesn't fit in. He basically learns that good gets praise and evil is sent away. Since he's always a black sheep, he basically says, okay, well, if I have to be bad, then I'm gonna be the best villain out there. So that becomes his goal. And then after that, the newspaper clippings start to show the development of the story, and that is our setup. So there is a little bit of a desire. The first desire that Megamind has is to become a great supervillain. And then by the time that we see him later in the story, he has done that. So that's kind of like more of a backstory type thing. It's not his desire for the whole story. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes I'm like, wow, you're great at explaining this stuff, Nat. So he has a moment here in this setup where he says, and then it hit me. Being bad is the one thing I'm good at. So that is his misbelief. His misbelief is that being bad is the only thing he's good at, and it's all he can do. That is where he's coming from. The setup continues. We go to present day, and Megamind's in jail. Metro Man's getting tons of recognition. Megamind breaks out of jail. He abducts Roxanne. He fights Metro Man. He tries to kill Metro Man. This is all stuff that has happened before. So this seems like a lot to have in the setup, but it's all normal. Like, he's abducted Roxanne before, he's fought a Metro Man before. It's like old hat. At the end of the setup, Megamind is fighting Metro Man, and he tries to kill Metro Man. And we kind of see that he doesn't want to succeed. He's like trying to kill Metro Man, but he's not planning on it happening. He doesn't think it's gonna happen. He doesn't want it to happen.
This dome is obviously lined with copper.
Yeah, so?
Sir, copper drains my powers.
Your weakness is copper? You're kidding, right?
The inciting incident is that it works. His plan finally works, and he kills Metro Man. And he takes over Metrocity. I love this movie. The inciting incident basically shoves your character outside of their comfort zone and changes the trajectory of their life, the trajectory of the story. That's what this inciting incident does. When Metro Man dies, Megamind's entire life changes. Megamind starts to feel very purposeless.
Why do I feel so melancholy?
His whole life has been built on this fun rivalry with Metro Man, and he feels like being bad's the only thing he's good at. So he says after he kills Metro Man, what's the point of being bad when there's no one to try and stop you? Like, what's the point of being a villain when there's no good to come in and fight you? We go from there into the debate. The inciting incident and the setup are responsible for setting up the need. So we're starting to see what Megamind needs in his life, which I'll tell you what that is in a minute. And here in the debate is where we set up the want. So the inciting incident has created a problem for your character. It's presented a change in their life, and they can kind of take it or not. And they have to basically wrestle with their fear. They have to say, do I want what I want enough to go after it even though I could face my fear? And so that's what the debate is. The debate is that instead of immediately responding to the inciting incident, they're thinking about, what should I do now? Basically, the character wants to accept the call to action, but they have to make sure that it won't make their fear worse. So the inciting incident of killing Metro Man is a call to action because it creates a void in Megamind's life, and he feels purposeless. He feels melancholy. He regrets it. He literally says, if only the world had a reset button. He wishes he hadn't done it. And he misses Metro Man. Like, Metro Man was kind of his friend.
Without you, evil is running rampant through the streets.
I'm so tired of running rampant through the streets.
And there's a moment when he becomes this dude named Bernard. He like freezes him and takes on his identity. It's such a good show. He becomes Bernard, and Roxanne, the woman that he's always abducting, walks around and all of a sudden she's not freaking out about him being there. Like, all of a sudden he's accepted and normal. Roxanne then states the theme, which is, she says, heroes aren't born, they're made. So obviously, who's the hero that's going to be made? But Megamind says to himself, oh my god, you're right, I could make a hero. I could make a hero to take Metro Man's place. So that's his desire. His desire for the story is to fight someone so that he can hang on to his villain identity. Being bad is the only thing he's good at. It's the only thing that gives him worth, and he has to keep doing it. So he wants to make a hero that will fight him. But as we're starting to see by now, his need is to be accepted as he is, to be loved as he is, which is what he gets a little glimpse of when Roxanne turns that corner and sees him as Bernard and doesn't freak out. And he fears having no purpose, but deeper than that, having no purpose to him means being worthless. So being a villain to him equates to having worth. What he needs to learn is that he has worth just as he is, and he doesn't have to be a villain to be loved. But anyways, the first plot point of the story is the point of no return. This is the moment that the character decides to accept the call to action, and they make a decision that can't be undone, and they cross the point of no return. This is when Megamind makes the superhero serum. And then pinch point 1 comes next, not immediately, but towards the end of Act 1. So plot point 1, Megamind's making the serum, he's talking to Mignon about it, and pinch point 1 comes next, and basically the pinch point is a little reminder that there is an antagonist coming for your character. Your character is not safe, they need to be watching out. Pinch point 1 is that Hal gets shot on accident with the superhero serum. Oops. Ooh, that's a yikes. Hal's whole character is a yikes, honestly.
Rented a bounty house? Chicks don't like bounty houses, they like clowns! Ow! Oh!
So, why is that the pinch point? When I sat down to take notes on this movie, I was like, it's obviously gonna be that shooting Hal is the first plot point. But it's not. The first plot point is actually making the serum. Because once Megamind makes the serum, he's made the serum. He's not gonna not use it. So the point of no return is him making the serum, because once the serum is made, it will be used. That is when he's like, this is the plan that I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make the serum. Plot point 1, point of no return. The pinch point is Hal getting shot, because Hal, later in the story, spoilers, becomes the antagonist. He becomes the villain that Megamind ends up having to fight. And so this is a pinch point because it's basically like, oh shit, you just created a villain. There's a bad guy. He was just made. That's why I think that Hal getting shot is not the plot point, it's the pinch point, because it is literally the creation of the villain. And the pinch point is there to serve as a reminder that the villain exists, that your character is fighting against something. So that is Act 1 of the 4-act story structure with examples from the greatest movie ever, Megamind. I am so excited to talk about the other 3 acts. I'm so excited to talk about how this movie fits into the story circle. I have little lines right here that like label the story circle parts. So I'm getting pumped, you guys. Thanks so much for being here. I am so happy to be talking about this movie. Honestly, Megamind brings me so much joy. Okay, I will see you guys next time. Happy trails!